Throughout history, some crimes have shocked the world: gruesome murders, high-profile betrayals, and cases that captivated the media. But behind every infamous criminal, there's a defense attorney willing to fight for their freedom, no matter the odds. These lawyers don't just argue cases. They craft narratives, challenge the system, and sometimes turn the tide of justice itself. From the trial of the century to shocking acquittals, these are the legal masterminds who stood between their clients and a lifetime behind bars. This is the story of 7 lawyers who defended the most infamous criminals and changed history forever. Johnnie Cochran. Johnnie Cochran was one of the most famous defense attorneys in American history, best known for leading the defense team in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. Born in 1937, Cochran was a skilled and charismatic lawyer whose courtroom presence and ability to craft compelling narratives made him a formidable advocate. He built his career on high-profile cases, often representing celebrities, but he also gained recognition for his work on civil rights cases, advocating for victims of police brutality and racial injustice. However, it was the O.J. Simpson trial in 1995 that cemented his place in legal history. O.J. Simpson, a former NFL star and actor, was accused of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. The trial became one of the most publicized and controversial cases in American history, largely due to the racial tensions and media spectacle surrounding it. Cochran joined Simpson's defense team, which included other high-profile attorneys such as Robert Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, and Alan Dershowitz. While all the lawyers played crucial roles in different aspects of the defense, it was Cochran's courtroom strategies and persuasive oratory that ultimately turned the tide in Simpson's favor. One of Cochran's most memorable moments came when he urged Simpson to try on the bloody gloves found at the crime scene. When the gloves appeared too small for Simpson's hands, Cochran famously told the jury, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." This phrase became an enduring symbol of the case, and it played a crucial role in casting doubt on the prosecution's evidence. He successfully framed the case not just as a question of Simpson's guilt or innocence, but as a broader issue of systemic racism in the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD. Cochran argued that the lead detective, Mark Fuhrman, was a racist and had likely planted evidence to frame Simpson. His ability to shift the trial's focus to police misconduct and racial bias resonated with many Americans, especially in the wake of the Rodney King beating and the subsequent LA riots. Cochran's defense strategies were controversial. Some critics accused him of playing the race card and deflecting from the actual evidence. Others, however, saw him as a brilliant legal mind who used the realities of racial inequality in America to protect his client from a biased legal system. Regardless of public opinion, his efforts led to Simpson's acquittal, a verdict that shocked the nation. While some celebrated the outcome as a victory against a historically corrupt police force, others believed it was a miscarriage of justice. After the Simpson trial, Cochran continued his legal career, focusing on civil rights cases and police brutality lawsuits. He represented several high-profile clients, but he also took on cases involving ordinary citizens who had been wronged by law enforcement. His legacy extends beyond his legal victories. He helped bring attention to racial disparities in the justice system and inspired many young black attorneys. In 2005, he passed away from a brain tumor, but his impact on the legal world remains profound. The O.J. Simpson trial remains one of the most discussed cases in American history, and much of that is due to Cochran's brilliant and controversial defense. F. Lee Bailey. F. Lee Bailey was one of the most well-known and controversial defense attorneys in American history, earning a reputation as a tough, aggressive, and highly intelligent lawyer. Over his long career, he defended some of the most infamous criminals, including Albert DeSalvo, who claimed to be the Boston Strangler. Bailey's sharp cross-examinations and ability to poke holes in the prosecution's case made him a formidable presence in the courtroom. Bailey was born in 1933 and had an unusual path to law. Before becoming an attorney, he was a fighter pilot in the U.S. Marine Corps. His military background instilled in him a sense of discipline and fearlessness that he carried into his legal career. He quickly rose to prominence as a defense attorney, taking on cases that were as sensational as they were controversial. One of his first major cases was the defense of Dr. Sam Shepard, a man accused of murdering his wife. Bailey successfully argued that Shepard had been denied a fair trial, and the conviction was overturned. This victory made Bailey a household name and set the stage for his future high-profile cases. In the 1960s, Bailey took on the case of Albert DeSalvo, who had confessed to being the Boston Strangler. Between 1962 and 1964, 13 women in the Boston area were raped and murdered. The crimes terrified the public, and the police were under intense pressure to find the perpetrator. DeSalvo, a factory worker with a history of breaking into women's homes, confessed to being the killer while in custody for a different series of crimes known as the Green Man assaults. However, there was no physical evidence linking him to the Boston Strangler murders. Bailey did not attempt to secure an acquittal for DeSalvo, but instead sought to prove that he was legally insane and should be committed to a psychiatric hospital rather than sent to prison. His defense rested on the argument that DeSalvo's confessions were unreliable and that he suffered from severe mental illness, which impaired his ability to control his actions. The case was highly controversial because while DeSalvo had confessed, there were inconsistencies in his statements, and some experts doubted that he was the real Boston Strangler. Some law enforcement officials and criminal profilers believed that multiple people were responsible for the murders and that DeSalvo may have been a fraud seeking notoriety. Despite Bailey's efforts, DeSalvo was not convicted of the Boston Strangler murders, as there was no concrete evidence against him. Instead, he was sentenced to life in prison for the unrelated Green Man crimes. While Bailey did not achieve the outcome he had hoped for, his handling of the case cemented his reputation as a lawyer willing to take on the most challenging and notorious defendants. Bailey's career was filled with ups and downs. He played a significant role in the O.J. Simpson defense team, helping to discredit key pieces of evidence, including the credibility of Detective Mark Fuhrman. However, his later years were marked by legal and financial troubles. He was disbarred in multiple states due to allegations of misconduct related to a client's assets. Despite these setbacks, Bailey's legacy as one of the most skilled and fearless defense attorneys in history remains intact. His ability to craft compelling legal arguments and challenge the prosecution's case made him a legend in the courtroom, and his work on the DeSalvo case remains one of the most fascinating chapters in true crime history. Robert Shapiro. Robert Shapiro was a high-profile criminal defense attorney who became internationally known for his role in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. Born in 1942, Shapiro built a legal career representing some of the most well-known celebrities and wealthy clients, specializing in negotiating plea deals and reducing sentences rather than taking cases to trial. However, the O.J. Simpson case in 1995 brought him into the national spotlight as one of the key figures in what would become one of the most famous trials in American history. When Simpson was accused of the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman, Shapiro was initially the lead attorney on his defense team. It was Shapiro who orchestrated the legal response following Simpson's infamous slow-speed chase in the white Ford Bronco. Shapiro advised Simpson to surrender and later worked to keep him from being held without bail, setting the stage for what would become an intense legal battle. Shapiro was known for his ability to negotiate plea deals, and there was speculation that he initially wanted Simpson to accept a lesser charge to avoid trial. However, Simpson maintained his innocence and refused to consider any plea bargain. As the case progressed, the defense team expanded to include Johnnie Cochran, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, and others, forming what became known as the Dream Team. As Cochran took a more dominant role in the trial, Shapiro's influence within the defense diminished, leading to tensions between the attorneys. One of Shapiro's most controversial moments came after the trial when he distanced himself from some of the strategies used by Cochran. While he maintained that Simpson was entitled to a strong defense, he expressed discomfort with how racial issues were emphasized in the courtroom. The defense team had argued that the LAPD was corrupt and that lead detective Mark Foreman was a racist who may have tampered with evidence. Shapiro later suggested that this strategy had turned the case into something larger than just Simpson's guilt or innocence. After Simpson's acquittal, Shapiro continued to represent high-profile clients, but his career took a turn toward corporate law and business ventures. He co-founded LegalZoom, an online legal services company, which became a massive success. He also became involved in the fight against drug addiction following the tragic death of his son Brent from an overdose. He established the Brent Shapiro Foundation to raise awareness about substance abuse and provide support to those struggling with addiction. Despite his accomplishments, Shapiro's legacy remains closely tied to the Simpson trial. Some view him as a brilliant attorney who played a crucial role in shaping the defense, while others see him as someone who was overshadowed by Cochran and later sought to distance himself from the case's more controversial elements. Regardless, his impact on the legal world is undeniable. His ability to negotiate deals and navigate complex legal situations made him a go-to lawyer for celebrities, and his involvement in one of the most famous trials in history ensures that his name will always be associated with high-stakes criminal defense. Clarence Darrow. Clarence Darrow was one of the most famous and influential defense attorneys in American history. Born in 1857, he became known for his passionate advocacy for the underprivileged and his ability to argue complex cases with both legal precision and emotional appeal. Throughout his career, Darrow took on some of the most controversial cases of his time, often defending individuals who were despised by the public. One of his most infamous cases was the defense of Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, two wealthy and highly intelligent young men who kidnapped and murdered 14-year-old Bobby Franks in 1924. Leopold and Loeb, both from wealthy Chicago families, believed they could commit the perfect crime. Inspired by the philosophical writings of Friedrich Nietzsche, they saw themselves as supermen who were intellectually superior to others and thus above moral and legal consequences. They meticulously planned the kidnapping and murder of Bobby Franks, believing their intelligence would allow them to evade capture. However, their plan quickly unraveled when Leopold's glasses were found near the crime scene, leading to their arrest. The public was horrified by the brutal and seemingly senseless nature of the crime. Given their confessions and the overwhelming evidence against them, many expected them to receive the death penalty. However, their families hired Clarence Darrow, who was known for his opposition to capital punishment and his ability to sway juries with his eloquence. Rather than attempting to argue their innocence, Darrow took a different approach. He entered a guilty plea and focused entirely on trying to save them from execution. Darrow's defense strategy was groundbreaking. He argued that Leopold and Loeb were the products of their environment, privileged but emotionally detached young men who had been led astray by intellectual arrogance rather than pure malice. He brought in expert witnesses to testify about their psychological state, making one of the first major uses of psychiatric defense in American legal history. His argument suggested that their actions were influenced by their upbringing, their education, and their detachment from normal, human emotions. But it was Darrow's closing argument that became legendary. In a 3-day speech, he passionately pleaded for mercy, arguing that the death penalty was an act of revenge rather than justice. He spoke about the futility of capital punishment, questioning what purpose it served beyond satisfying the public's desire for retribution. He emphasized the youth of the defendants. Leopold was 19, and Loeb was 18. stating that their lives should not be ended so young. His speech was an emotional appeal to the judge, as there was no jury in the sentencing phase. Darrow's arguments worked. Rather than being sentenced to death, Leopold and Loeb received life in prison. The ruling shocked many, as it was widely assumed they would face execution. Darrow's victory in the case solidified his reputation as the greatest defense attorney of his time and reinforced his lifelong opposition to the death penalty. After the Leopold and Loeb case, Darrow continued to take on high-profile cases, including the famous Scopes monkey trial, where he defended a teacher accused of teaching evolution in Tennessee. He remained a passionate advocate for civil liberties and social justice until his death in 1938. Clarence Darrow's legacy is that of a lawyer who fought not just for his clients, but for broader societal change. His ability to humanize even the most despised defendants and his relentless opposition to the death penalty helped shape modern criminal defense strategies. The Leopold and Loeb case remains one of the most infamous murder cases in American history, and Darrow's defense is still studied in law schools as an example of the power of persuasive advocacy. Mark Geragos. Mark Geragos is a well-known criminal defense attorney who has represented some of the most infamous clients in recent history. Born in 1957, Geragos built his reputation as a skilled and aggressive lawyer, often taking on high-profile cases involving celebrities and controversial figures. Over the years, he has defended a range of clients, including Michael Jackson, Winona Ryder, and Chris Brown. However, one of the most notorious cases of his career was the defense of Scott Peterson, a man accused of murdering his pregnant wife, Laci Peterson, in a case that captivated the nation. Scott Peterson's case began in late 2002 when his wife Laci, who was 8 months pregnant, went missing on Christmas Eve. The search for Laci quickly became a national media frenzy, with news outlets covering every development in the case. From the beginning, Peterson's behavior raised suspicions. He appeared unemotional during interviews, gave inconsistent statements, and was later revealed to have been having an affair with a woman named Amber Frey. The prosecution argued that Peterson had killed Laci to escape the responsibilities of fatherhood and maintain his affair. As the case gained attention, Peterson hired Mark Geragos to defend him. Geragos, known for his media savvy and courtroom skills, took on the challenge of representing a man who was already widely presumed guilty by the public. He faced an uphill battle, as the prosecution had built a strong circumstantial case against Peterson, despite the lack of direct physical evidence linking him to the crime. Geragos's strategy was to attack the prosecution's narrative and cast doubt on the timeline of events. He argued that the case against Peterson was built on speculation rather than hard evidence. He pointed out inconsistencies in the investigation, including reports of a burglary near the Peterson home on the day Laci disappeared, which he suggested could have led to her abduction. He also questioned the reliability of the evidence found in Peterson's boat, where prosecutors claimed he had dumped Laci's body into the San Francisco Bay. Despite Geragos's aggressive defense, the public opinion against Peterson was overwhelming. The trial was one of the most heavily covered in recent history, with courtroom footage and daily updates broadcast nationwide. The emotional impact of Laci's disappearance, combined with Peterson's affair and his seemingly cold demeanor, made it difficult for the defense to shift the narrative in his favor. In 2004, Peterson was convicted of first-degree murder for Laci's death and second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son, Connor. He was sentenced to death, though the sentence was later overturned in 2020 due to juror misconduct. Despite this, Peterson remains in prison serving a life sentence without parole. The Scott Peterson case was a significant moment in Mark Geragos's career, marking one of the few high-profile cases where his client was convicted. While Geragos remains a respected defense attorney, This trial demonstrated the challenges of defending a client in the face of overwhelming media coverage and public opinion. He has since continued to represent high-profile clients and remains an influential figure in the legal world. His ability to handle complex and controversial cases has cemented his reputation as one of the top defense attorneys in the country. Jose Baez is a criminal defense attorney best known for his successful defense of Casey Anthony, a woman accused of murdering her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee Anthony. Born in 1970, Baez had an unconventional path to becoming a lawyer. After dropping out of high school, he earned his GED, served in the U.S. Navy, and eventually put himself through law school. Despite facing challenges in his early career, he rose to national prominence with his defense of Casey Anthony, a case that became one of the most controversial and widely followed trials in modern history. In 2008, Casey Anthony was arrested after her daughter, Kaylee, was reported missing. Initially, Casey told police that a babysitter had taken Kaylee, but her story quickly fell apart when it was revealed that the babysitter she named did not exist. Further investigation uncovered troubling details, including Casey's apparent lack of concern for her missing daughter, her partying lifestyle in the weeks following Kaylee's disappearance, and the discovery of Kaylee's remains in a wooded area near the Anthony home. The prosecution argued that Casey had murdered her daughter to regain her freedom and avoid the responsibilities of motherhood. Jose Baez took on Casey's defense, despite skepticism from many in the legal community. At the time, he was not a widely known attorney, and many believed that Casey had little chance of avoiding conviction. However, Baez proved to be a master strategist, crafting a defense that shocked the courtroom. Rather than attempting to prove Casey's innocence directly, he introduced a new narrative, that Kaylee had accidentally drowned in the family's pool, and that Casey's father, George Anthony, had helped cover it up. This argument, though controversial and lacking direct evidence, was enough to create reasonable doubt. Baez also attacked the prosecution's forensic evidence, challenging the reliability of the methods used to detect decomposition in Casey's car trunk. He brought in experts to refute key aspects of the prosecution's case, arguing that there was no solid proof of how Kaylee died. His cross-examinations were aggressive, and he skillfully exploited inconsistencies in witness testimonies. The trial captivated the public, with millions tuning in to watch the proceedings live. The media had largely painted Casey Anthony as guilty, and many expected a conviction. However, in a shocking verdict, the jury found Casey not guilty of murder, citing a lack of direct evidence tying her to Kaylee's death. She was convicted only on lesser charges of providing false information to law enforcement. The acquittal outraged much of the public, with many believing that Casey had gotten away with murder. Jose Baez, however, was hailed as a brilliant defense attorney who had outmaneuvered the prosecution. His ability to dismantle the state's case and create doubt in the jury's mind showcased his legal skills and strategic thinking. Following the Casey Anthony trial, Baez became one of the most sought-after defense attorneys in the country. He went on to represent other high-profile clients, including former NFL star Aaron Hernandez, whom he successfully defended in a double murder case. His rise from an unknown attorney to one of the most respected defense lawyers in the U.S. is a testament to his courtroom abilities and his willingness to take on difficult cases. Despite his success, Baez remains a controversial figure. Some view him as a brilliant legal mind who fights for his clients no matter the odds, while others see him as a manipulative lawyer who helped acquit a guilty defendant. Regardless of opinion, his impact on the legal world is undeniable. His defense of Casey Anthony remains one of the most talked-about legal cases in American history, and his ability to craft compelling defenses continues to make him one of the most formidable attorneys in the field. Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is one of the most well-known and controversial defense attorneys in American history, with a career spanning several decades. Born in 1938, Dershowitz became a professor at Harvard Law School at the age of 28 and quickly gained a reputation as a brilliant legal mind. He has defended some of the most infamous and high-profile clients, often taking on cases that generate intense public scrutiny. While he has been involved in many significant legal battles, one of his most notorious cases was his defense of Klaus von Bülow, a wealthy socialite accused of attempting to murder his wife, Sonny von Bülow, in a case that gripped the nation. Klaus von Bülow, a British socialite of Danish descent, was accused of twice attempting to kill his wife, Martha Sonny von Bülow, by injecting her with insulin, leading to her falling into a coma. The case was highly sensationalized due to the wealth and social status of the von Bülow family. Sonny was an heiress to a massive fortune, and Klaus was accused of attempting to murder her in order to gain access to her wealth. After the second coma left her in a persistent vegetative state, her children from a previous marriage pushed for an investigation, leading to Klaus's arrest and trial. The prosecution's case was built largely on circumstantial evidence, including testimony from the von Bülow's maid, who claimed to have found suspicious syringes and vials in Klaus's possession. Medical experts testified that Sonny's coma was likely caused by an insulin overdose, despite the fact that she was not diabetic. Klaus von Bülow was convicted in 1982 and sentenced to 30 years in prison. However, he appealed the verdict and hired Alan Dershowitz to lead his defense in the retrial. Dershowitz's approach to the case was methodical and aggressive. He meticulously dissected the prosecution's evidence, arguing that the original trial was deeply flawed. One of his primary strategies was to challenge the forensic evidence, pointing out inconsistencies in the medical testimony and suggesting alternative explanations for Sonny's condition. He argued that Sonny had a history of drug and alcohol use, which could have contributed to her coma. He also questioned the credibility of the witnesses, particularly the maid, who had financial motives for testifying against Klaus. One of the most crucial elements of Dershowitz's defense was his ability to introduce doubt into the jury's mind. He emphasized that there was no direct evidence proving that Klaus had injected his wife with insulin. There were no eyewitnesses, no video footage, and no definitive proof linking him to an attempted murder. He also brought in top medical experts to challenge the prosecution's claim that Sonny's coma was caused by insulin at all, presenting alternative theories for her medical condition. Dershowitz's efforts paid off. In 1985, the conviction was overturned, and Klaus von Bülow was acquitted in the retrial. The verdict was highly controversial, with many believing that Klaus had indeed attempted to murder his wife, but had been saved by a brilliant legal defense. Others saw the case as an example of how the legal system can be manipulated by wealth and power, as Klaus had the resources to hire one of the best attorneys in the country. After the case, Dershowitz wrote a book about the trial, Reversal of Fortune, which was later adapted into a film starring Jeremy Irons as Klaus von Bülow. The case cemented Dershowitz's reputation as one of the most skilled and high-profile defense attorneys in America. His ability to overturn what seemed like a slam-dunk conviction showcased his legal brilliance and strategic thinking. Throughout his career, Dershowitz has continued to take on controversial cases, including defending O.J. Simpson as part of his legal team, advising Harvey Weinstein, and working on cases involving political figures. He has also remained an outspoken legal commentator, frequently weighing in on constitutional and criminal law issues. Despite his many successes, Dershowitz remains a polarizing figure. Some view him as a principled advocate for civil liberties and due process, while others criticize him for defending individuals accused of heinous crimes. Regardless of one's opinion, there is no denying that his impact on the legal world has been profound. His defense of Klaus von Bülow remains one of the most famous legal battles in modern history, demonstrating his ability to dismantle a prosecution's case and secure acquittals even in the most seemingly hopeless situations.